For the best part of 5 years, he's been living in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, confined to a single room, but safe in the knowledge he's protected by political asylum. But could the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange soon be kicked out? In February, Ecuador's main opposition candidate Guillermo Lasso promised to cordially ask Senor Assange to leave within 30 days of assuming a mandate. Now, he argued that Assange's presence here at the embassy was a burden on Ecuadorian taxpayers. And although he later simply said the situation would be reviewed, the threat is being taken seriously by Assange's legal team. In 2012, Ecuador announced it was granting Assange asylum, citing the threat represented by the secret US investigation into WikiLeaks publishing activities and calls by American politicians for Assange to be assassinated. But Britain made it clear that if Assange left the building, he'd be arrested and sent to Sweden. Prosecutors in Stockholm have long sought to extradite him over a sexual assault allegation dating back to 2010, an allegation Assange denies. Assange, who's now 45, has always said he won't travel to Sweden because he might then be extradited to the US, where if convicted he might face the death penalty. He was finally interviewed by Swedish prosecutors inside the embassy late last year. Also last year, Assange's supporters welcomed a finding by a working group of the United Nations that his time in the embassy amounted to arbitrary detention.
UK lost, Sweden lost, it lost at the highest level.
That's been ridiculed by both the UK and Sweden. But in March, reports emerged that US federal prosecutors had expanded the grand jury investigation into WikiLeaks to include recent leaks of files outlining Central Intelligence Agency hacking techniques.
This is a historic act of devastating incompetence.
That might strengthen Assange's case for asylum, but that protection was granted by a presidential decree and it could, in theory, be removed by whoever's in power in Ecuador. Nadeem Barber, Al Jazeera, London.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. If you can see my picture here, it doesn't seem like you can. Give me a thumbs up if you've got a picture. Something doesn't seem to be working here. Huh, let's see here. You can see me, but I cannot see me. That's really weird. But you guys can see me, huh? Okay. I don't get that at all. Let me check the settings here. Give me a second. You guys can see me. Alex, come on in. Come on in. We're doing a little bit different show today. I've got audio techs coming in and out of the studio, so everything's in disarray, and everybody's got to set up our new format and all this kind of stuff. So I believe you guys can see me because all I see is black darkness, which is kind of a metaphor for U-Screw, right? Because we've been totally shut down and we've been totally blacked out. So maybe pull up see if we can see it on the computer screen if you're getting an image over there, because I'm seriously shooting blind right now. Give me a minute. I'm going to be digging in very deep into Donald Trump today and asking a very specific question. Has he been compromised? Let me first make sure we're getting a stream here. We're not having some other problems or something. So give me a second.
Dude, guys, so last week after I showed a few multi-million-dollar businesses that I own, you guys kept asking what's the...
Okay, that's so weird. Yeah, there's no image on this, but okay, so we're good to go. And so we're shooting in the dark today, which again is a good metaphor for, I guess, the topic and U-Screw, because we're totally blacked out. We've been totally shut down. I had dinner with a few family members last night. I was just explaining to them the total shutdown on U-Screw, which is just absolutely unbelievable. Again, it's not surprising to me because I've been telling you this is going to happen for 10 years. But it is a little shocking, even from a guy who knows that this was coming. It just, how do I put it? It's clarification, but more, I guess, confirmation that we really, truly do live in Nazi Germany. That we really do live in a fascist police state, that it's this bad. It's a total, absolute boycott and shutdown. by the establishment media, by you, Screw, by this engineered boycott of which allegedly Google's lost near $1 billion because all these companies have pulled out to shut down the little guy, alternative media, etc. And not just us here in studio. So again, it's why it's so important that we have your support. We're tweeting all this stuff out. Again, forgive me. I'm putting this up in our forums on demand, but we've had a little bit of technical difficulties today. But you guys like change, right? So it's intimate, what we're doing right now. I think it's pretty cool. So let's just keep going. And all the flash and all that stuff doesn't even matter anyways. It's just the content. So who really cares, right? Okay, so the biggest story in the news, what is it? The biggest story in the news is the geopolitical conflict, obviously ensuing in Syria, of which AMTV was way, way ahead of the curve. In fact, no one was reporting on Syria. Nobody was reporting on the false flag chemical attack. Nobody was reporting on the fact that Trump had flip-flopped up until now. Okay, now we're starting to see, we're just always way ahead of the curve. I mean, just like we covered Syria in length for, going on almost 10 years now, telling you there would be a war before there was even a war there, before ISIS even existed, before the CIA even created them. By the way, I've got some major heavy hitters. I haven't even relayed this to half the crew, but we've got some major heavy hitters coming on the program next week. They're going to blow your mind. So stay tuned. Some amazing sources. So what the heck am I getting at? So Trump does a major flip-flop yesterday, of which I put out a few different videos on. He says he's flexible. Believe me, I'm flexible, he says. Believe me. I'm doing, my best Donald Trump impression. So he's completely flip-flopped and changed his mind on Syria and has reversed with 180 degrees. So basically he just lied to all of us when he was running, and I've got to point this out as a media analyst. Now, I still support Trump. I back the guy, and I'm going to get into the deeper part of this that maybe some people don't understand in a minute. But I'm going to call his bluff, and I'm going to point out you're a lying bastard because you've completely flip-flopped on what you told us we were going to do. But I do think that there might be some reasoning behind it, and I'm going to tell you why. No one else is going to tell you this, by the way. I was having a discussion again with some close allies of mine last night over dinner. So, what did Trump say before the election? He said that the focus should not be on Syria, it should not be on Assad, it should be on killing and destroying ISIS, which I think we're all 100% in agreement with, right? I've got no problem. Sure, and it should be easy to stop considering the Central Intelligence Agency here in the United States and the intelligence agencies you don't even know exist are the ones that created it, funded it, armed it, got it kicked off the ground. Again, this is just the new version of Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, and just the new boogeyman of which they can use as a catalyst and a diversion and a smokescreen to continue the agenda in the Middle East, a mass destabilization campaign, infinitum into infinity, over and over and over and over and over and over again, because that's the agenda. More killing, more bloodshed, more murder, more, all these things. It just keeps going and it keeps going. It keeps going. Alex, do we have it in the forums too? Just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, great. Want to make sure all of our on-demand members have been alerted to this changing of format here. And please join us. Please support us. We really do need your support. I'm on a hiring spree this year. We just brought on a new contributor full-time. I want to welcome Chad to the AMTV platform. You've seen him. He's been putting out videos pretty much every day. And I'll be hiring a lot more people. How do we do that? Well, pretty easy. Price of a cup of coffee, $4.95 a month, $49.95 a year. We literally go to war head-on with the Criminal News Network. Fox News, ABC, NBC, WAPO, New York Times, New York Post, Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, all these people. We're engaging in a full-scale war, and we're building an army. So it's exciting for me to grow the operation, to hire more people, employ more people. And that's pretty amazing too, because most small businesses have been killed, right? In this new economy, they don't even exist, right? It's a unique experience to actually be contributing to the GDP in a real way and not in an artificial bailout way, and that's something I'm very proud of. So, Trump has flip-flopped. I said this yesterday. I expect within the next 24, 48, 72 hours, these are just my instincts. We'll see what happens, but I think you'll begin to see bombs dropped all over Syria. I think you're going to see more blood. War zone. You're going to see this blasted, probably kick off tomorrow or over the weekend. They like to kick things off on a Friday, Saturday, kind of over the weekend where people aren't paying attention. I think you're going to see those images. I was even talking with our producer here in studio yesterday about this. And I told him to let me know when he saw Trump lighting up this part of the world, because I don't have cable television. So someone's going to have to alert me. So please alert me when you start to see this, as I suspect, as Trump is getting his chess pieces in place. So, Donald Trump, and this is where we were way ahead of the curve. I was in pre-production on several pieces that aired over the last few days, where I did a specific piece on why is no one talking about Syria. This is before the chemical attack, the second false flag in just a number of years that's transpired to, again, put Donald Trump in a position where he caves, and he caves to public pressure, and he also potentially caves to the deep state. I'm going to get into all of these details here in a second, and what I really think is going behind the Oval Office, not to mention Bannon, right? This is the other big bombshell story. Bannon has been removed from the upper echelons of the military roundtable in Washington, D.C. I'm going to get to that in a moment. I don't think it's what it appears. I don't think it's what you might think. So, I've got to point out and criticize Donald Trump's words. And again, I let the man speak for himself yesterday. What did he say again, just to reemphasize? He's flexible. His opinions changed on Syria and Assad. And basically what that means is that instead of just focusing on ISIS, which is what he... And Alex, if you go to my email account, I actually sent you a thumbnail. Okay. So it's like matches the same. So everything's changed for Donald Trump. Absolutely everything is what he said yesterday. And now, not just will he be specifically targeting ISIS, but he's targeting Syria, he's targeting Assad, and this is, he knows this too, incredibly, 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 believe me, Donald, believe me, incredibly dangerous. A couple things that I've witnessed, that I bear witness to, that I think are concerning. There's been a demeanor change in Donald Trump. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's been a very recognizable demeanor change. It's almost like since becoming the president of the United States, the 45th president of the alleged most powerful country in the world, although we've been on the decline for decades, and as much as I love the country, I'm also going to be truthful with you guys, I don't think we're the most powerful country in the world anymore. I think our military-industrial complex might still have an edge, but that's about it. When we look at economic policy, we look at structural policy here in the United States, the health of the middle class, these kinds of things, social morality, I think we're very much on the decline. And if we're looking at the Freedom Index, even the Heritage Foundation agrees with me. I mean, we are pretty much at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, it's ridiculous, some of these countries that are ahead of us on the Freedom Index. And the proof is in the pudding. I mean, again, did I not just intro this video today? I'm almost, even though I've talked about this for years and it's not surprising, it's still shocking when you realize you live in a fascist police state. It does. It shocks me. It shocks me, for example, that AMTV has been completely shadow banned on YouTube. It shocks me that we've been completely restricted. It shocks me that all the content that I aired yesterday on Syria is completely out of the algorithm, no longer comes in the recommended videos section of YouTube, which accounts for 80-90% of the traffic. It's shocking, even though I know it's reality. You know, there's a little piece inside of you that's kind of hoping you're wrong, right? You know, that's kind of hoping, you know, maybe what I'm saying is too extreme, and maybe I'm wrong about this. So when it actually happens and you get the bold-faced confirmation, it's a little scary, even for a guy like me, who knows the. Okay, let me send that to you. I think hold on. Let me send a thumbnail to. Want to make sure our on-demand subscribers get all this stuff. So let me do this here real quick. Then we'll get back to Trump. See, this is fun. You guys get kind of the behind the scenes of what we do. See if I can find this. Give me a second. Because I think it's a pretty good thumbnail that we used, right, guys? And then I'm going to get into the specifics of Donald Trump here in a minute. So bear with. Ask me a question while I'm doing this real quick. Almost got it. There we go. Okay, you should have that in a minute. Okay. So what have I noticed? This is what I was talking about last night with some very close allies. There's been a very specific demeanor change with Donald Trump. It almost appears that there's a weight, a albatross almost around his neck. And I think there's a number of reasons for this. First of all, Donald Trump comes from a kind of a corporate, Trump Inc., Trump Co. type environment where he calls the shots at all times, right? He's the ultimate capitalist. And in that world, when you want to get something done, it just gets done. You order people around, they do what you say, right? There's politics, and yeah, he's had to play the political game, and he has strategic allies. There's politics and business and all this kind of stuff, obviously. It's one big entangled web. But it's not like what he's facing in the bureaucracy today, right? Within the dark corners of Washington, D.C., where, for example, what was his big agenda? His big agenda, one of the items on his to-do list was to repeal and replace Obamacare. That's been an epic failure. Okay, it failed before it even started. Why? Because of the gridlock in Washington, D.C., and because I could drop some pretty aggressive expletives, but I won't, but Republicans and Democrats that are just preventing this from moving through in any real way. Because what Donald Trump is facing internally has been a coup. It's been nothing short but an actual, literal, obvious coup, which is why Michael Flynn no longer exists, which is why Jeff Sessions had been under attack and went down in a ball of flames, why Donald Trump can't really trust anybody, why he's pulling in just a few people closer to him, like Jared Kushner, for example, who he's been sending kind of almost like a pseudo Secretary of State, is what Jared is serving as. What a lot of people don't like. And there's been some speculation that Jared has been leaking. Maybe I'll get to some reports on this information to the press. I haven't dived too deeply into that, but I've seen that. It's kind of on my radar right now. So Trump, back to the weight, back to the demeanor change. You can see it in his face. Even when he was speaking yesterday, of which we played some of this footage, where he spoke to his newly formed flexibility, I think he's recognizing a couple things. Number one, the realization of how difficult his position as president actually is. That he could even be regretting it. This is what an ally of mine was telling me, or at least in their opinion last night, is that he thinks Trump actually regrets becoming president of the United States now that he's gotten there. And, kind of the star factor is kind of worn off, and he's in the White House, and the reality's kind of set in, that he may, in fact, might even regret that he's even there. After seeing how dark, evil this bureaucratic nightmare truly is on the inside. In addition to that, in addition to the coup, I think that there's probably a lot that Donald Trump has learned in recent weeks since he's become president of the United States that I think just rests heavy on your soul. Because there's things, not that he knows everything, because the deep state's not going to relay everything to him. They're going to relay some classified information to the president of the United States, but as we go up what is top secret list, there's so much that Trump doesn't know. I mean, the presidents really don't run the show. That's what people need to understand. They have some authority, but they really are just the face of the people that really run things. The banking cartel, the banking elite. This is why these people are still a part of Donald Trump's cabinet, for example. There's a weight and a darkness. You can see it. Just look at Trump and see his eyes. Look at his face. Look at his demeanor change. There's a weight on his soul. He now knows things that, again, you think you know things, for example. Trump thought just like, let's say you or I ran for president of the United States, you think you know things. You think you know how things really work. You think you know how bad things really are on the inside. Until you get there and you sit down with the generals, some of which you can trust, most of which you probably can't, to be honest. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But you learn things, and once you recognize the real truth, I'm sure it's tough to sleep. I'm sure he knows things, for example, about the financial crisis, the inside job that it was. It probably doesn't sit well with him. I'm sure he knows the truth about September 11th. I'm sure he knows the real reasons that we're in Iraq and Afghanistan and in Syria. I'm sure he knows a lot that most normal people, and Trump isn't normal, Trump's a stud. He's a very unique individual. It's amazing that he has the energy he does at, 70 years old. There's things that just most people, 99% of the population, couldn't handle. Now, Trump can't handle it, but you'll see even a strong mad dog, big dog on the block like a Donald Trump, it's even wearing him down. Now, here's what I also think has kind of darkened his soul in recent days and weeks. Donald Trump knows he can't even trust any of the information he's getting. So let me give you an example. Here we have the deep state, which is working behind the scenes to take him out, from attacking his cabinet picks, to promoting his impeachment, to going as far as, God forbid, pushing us to another JFK moment. He knows it. We all know it. Everybody knows it. And God, I pray that doesn't happen. Trump might not even survive through the first term. I mean, that's just reality. Literally, figuratively, physically. He might not even get through it. As part of my conversation last night with some of my allies, some are even questioning that after the 4-year term, if he'll even decide to run again, he might just be one and done. Because again, a lot of the people I know say they kind of think he regrets even being there, which tells you something about how bad things are in Washington, how just absolutely ugly, how dangerous and how much danger we're all in as Americans, that there's a pretty good chance, although I'm going to disagree with that analysis, there's a pretty good chance, and I think there's some merit to it, that not only does Donald Trump regret even running now that he's president of the United States, but that he might just be one and done after these 4 terms and not even run again, because it's that bad. It's that ugly. I actually think he probably will run again if he does survive, if he makes it through the next couple of years. I think he will, because he's so it's kind of like once you've gone all in, what do you got? What is it? The movie The Godfather. I tried to leave and then they pulled me back in. That famous line with Michael. There's some merit to that too, where I don't think Donald Trump, he's already all in. I mean, God, well, he's not going to sail off into retirement now. The guy's, 70? Now that he's already in it, he'd probably just run again and die after that. I mean, honestly. Very dark conversation, obviously, that we're having today. Demeanor change. Also, Donald Trump can't trust anybody around him. So let me give you an example. When he's sitting in the war room and these generals are telling him and giving him the inside scoop of what's going on in Syria, and they're telling him that Assad is responsible for the chemical attack, which makes no sense at all because it's completely illogical. As we had a insider from Syria, born and raised in Aleppo yesterday, I encourage you to watch the video. And this has been my argument for years. It was the original argument in 2013 when we had the chemical attack in Ghouta. There is no reason that Assad would attack his own people with chemical weapons only to give NATO an excuse to kill him. It doesn't even make sense. It's completely and absolutely illogical. He's not going to give the West a reason to bomb. It'd be bomb him in his country. It'd be like the equivalent of shooting yourself in the foot. He's not an idiot. Okay, which is how I knew in 2013, before the evidence even broke, the corroborated evidence from Pulitzer Prize winner Seymour Hersh and Carlo Del Ponte and countless, thousands of other journalists, media analysts, etc., like many of you tuning in and myself included, that I knew that because it's just not even logical. Just like it's not even logical, though we're still weighing the evidence, that Assad would commit an act like this again. It's another false flag. Now, there was some reports that came out yesterday that Assad, whether or not this is verified or not, I don't know, that Assad had blown up what he thought was a munitions building or something like that in Syria that just so happened. I personally, we're looking into this, but I kind of think it's bullshit. Blew up a building, and then that had the chemical weapons, which resulted accidentally with him striking this particular depot, and then that resulted in the chemical attack yesterday. Honestly, I think that's just being spun by the mainstream media. What is my point? My point is Trump can't even trust his advisors, just like he can't even trust his Secret Service. If I was Trump, I would have my own Secret Service. Like, I would have my own security team, which, by the way, Trump does have. They would be my first layer of security, followed by Secret Service. I mean, look at how Secret Service treated JFK. Not very well. Okay? Especially when the deep state is working against Donald Trump. Turn this on. Give me a second here. It's super hot in here right now, so I gotta turn on the fan. We live in Arizona. So, there's a darkness with Trump right now, and you can just see it. It's all over his face. Let's get into the other major headline. This broke yesterday. Bannon, Steve Bannon, former Goldman Sachs, former Breitbart, who actually has been quite outspoken and has direct linkages to the Mercer family, which is really old philanthropic money that not only had invested heavily in Breitbart News, I think in the amount of about $10 million when Breitbart started to get off the ground back in the day of Andrew, before the U.S. government killed him, in my opinion. I think they invested $10 million and took 50% of the company. Now Breitbart is a massive media enterprise. Steve Bannon, who's actually been very outspoken in a lot of regards with the too big to fail 2008-2009 bailouts, which is interesting coming from a Wall Street exec and also a Hollywood producer. I want you to think about all this, how Hollywood and media is directly tied, that propaganda web is directly tied into the highest levels of Washington, D.C. today. Because again, as I've said many times before, media is the most powerful institution on the planet. It's more powerful than bombs. It's more powerful than bullets. It's more powerful than any weapon out there. So, Bannon is out. This is what broke yesterday. I'm going to give you my opinion on this. I'm looking at a couple reports. Mega donor, this is from Politico, urged Bannon not to resign, referring to the Mercers, Rebecca. Trump's strategist threatened to leave the White House after clashing with Jared Kushner, allegedly. I think there might be more to the story here. The man credited with owning Donald Trump's populist message and guiding him into the White House has grown frustrated amid continued infighting in the West Wing, so much so that in recent weeks, a top donor had to convince him to stay in his position. 5 people, including a senior administration official, and several sources close to the president, tell Politico that Steve Bannon, one of Trump's closest advisors, had clashed with the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who's taken on an increasingly prominent portfolio in the West Wing. Bannon has complained that Kushner and his allies are trying to undermine his populist approach, the sources said, according to the mainstream media. Republican mega donor Rebecca Mercer, very powerful woman who, again, old money, big donors to Trump, invested in Breitbart News. Rebecca Mercer, a longtime Bannon confidant who became a prominent Trump supporter during the campaign, urged Bannon not to resign. Rebecca Mercer prevailed upon him to stay, said one person familiar with the situation. Another person familiar with the situation, and basically what was sold to Bannon, allegedly, if this is to be believed, is Rebecca sold him on the idea this is a long-term play. So let me get into the nitty-gritty of what I think. So he was removed from the National Security Council, right? So he's removed from the table, which many people, the insiders, the neocons, the people that we can't even trust, didn't think he deserved a position, along with Michael Flynn, who was politically assassinated, didn't think he deserved a seat at the National Security Council, which, shares seating with top U.S. generals here in the United States, which, by the way, all want war, and many of which I don't think can be trusted at all because they're pushing the deep state agenda. And they're going to push the war agenda and the geopolitical agenda in Syria, as they've been doing, and carrying through and carrying on, whether or not it was George W. Bush, or it was Barack Obama, or it's now Donald Trump. So here's the thing. I think Trump is smart. He might be bluffing. Okay? Now, he said that, he's not going to alert the terrorists, for example, or tell people what he's going to do. So when he came on camera, as a media pundit, I'm going to call Donald Trump out 110%. It's my job to do that because he said one thing and then he just said the opposite, which means he's flip-flop. I'm going to call him out, as is my responsibility and is my integrity to do. However, there's also a good possibility he's just bluffing right now, that there's a reason why he's attempting to telegraph to Assad, but more importantly, doesn't have anything to do with Assad. It has more to do with Russia, and it has more to do with China and his meeting with Xi Jinping here today and tomorrow. Why would he be doing that? Well, and this is coming to mind right now. I think because it gives him a little bit more leverage than he otherwise would have if he didn't do what he just did yesterday. That's a possibility. I don't know if that is the case necessarily, but that's a possibility that Donald Trump is bluffing to give him an edge and a little bit more leverage, whereas Putin and China and Iran don't know if Trump is for real or he's not. So it could be a bluff, because originally Trump said he's just going to focus on ISIS, but he's not going to destabilize Assad. You need to understand, for example, that Putin has no problem with Donald Trump taking out ISIS. ISIS is actually a common enemy. So Putin's been bombing ISIS, so has America, up until the point after they were finished creating them for their own nefarious reasons. Then they use it as the illusion. It's why they haven't been fully taken out. But you see, Putin has no issue with Trump annihilating ISIS. What he has issue with is the destabilization of Syria. That's what he takes issue with. So by Trump coming on camera yesterday and maybe potentially bluffing, which might be the case, and saying that he's changed his mind and flip-flopped, he now has this newly formed flexibility. And after reviewing the mainstream media's evidence, like that can be trusted, here's why I actually think probably it really is a bluff. We know Donald Trump doesn't trust the mainstream media. So yesterday he's saying, well, I watched these images on the mainstream media of these kids that died from this chemical attack, which, by the way, really happened, but is a false flag, because I think the evidence doesn't point to Assad as the culprit. It actually points to the rebels on the ground, just like in 2013, which was 100% verified with documented evidence and proof. I actually think, and I'm uncovering this live right now with you guys as I'm thinking it through with you intellectually, I actually kind of think it proves my point. Trump was bluffing yesterday. It's at least, at the very least, something that we should consider. I think he's potentially bluffing because it gives him leverage. Leverage that he otherwise wouldn't have. And it throws off Putin, because this is chess. It throws off Putin and it throws off China off balance a little bit, where they don't know. Is it a bluff or is he for real? See, this is where I think actually Trump really is a genius, and he's so incredibly tactful and tactical. One of the reasons why he was elected. I mean, he didn't doubt for a minute, for example, Trump, that he would not be elected president of the United States. Not for a minute. Nor did Bannon. So let's get back to Bannon. Is Bannon really out for realsies? I don't think so. At all. How are we doing? Image still look okay? Maybe double check that. Just make sure everyone's got a good image of me. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Here, I'll back it up a little bit. So, it's weird looking at yourself on multiple computer screens. But, what was I even talking about? Bannon? Is he really out for realsies? I don't think so. No. Not at all. Again, I talked about this a couple days. I think this is just what they want you to think. They just want you to think that he's out. For various reasons. He's been very unpopular in the eyes of the establishment politicians, neocons, conservatives, and Democrats. So it's important for Trump to at least make it appear like he's been removed, even though he hasn't. Again, it's kind of like Tony Soprano taking a back seat. Yeah, I don't run things anymore. This other guy, Tony, does, right? Or the other Tony does, or whatever. But he's still, you never want to be a target, is my point. You're sitting at the top of the pyramid. We see this in movies, for example, right? They show the pyramid of who's in charge of the drug cartel. You don't want to be the guy at the top, even if you really are the guy running things. You want to be the guy that people don't think is in charge, which is kind of what I think is going on with Bannon right now. So I think it's just a little bit of a PR, public relations renegotiation in the public's eye, in the perception of even the mainstream media cartel, that he's out, that he's on the outsies, but he's really not. That's my take. So I think it's manufactured internal conflict that isn't even real, in my opinion, because I believe that Trump trusts Bannon because he has very few people that he can trust. I mean, who can the guy trust, honestly? He can trust his daughter Ivanka, which is why she's pretty much, sitting right next to the White House. Probably the most interesting person that we just could dig into for hours on end would be Kushner. Why does Trump trust this guy? Kushner really is. And what's kind of creepy about the guy, too, is that he's so young. And I'm not saying he's not fully capable as a businessman and as an advisor in these kinds of things, because I don't believe in ageism. I really don't. And I'm a young guy myself. But again, I back up to the question, why is there so much implicit trust in Kushner? You just have to do kind of a loosey-goosey background on the guy. And his father went to prison. He, I think, allegedly had intimidated and tampered witnesses when he was facing trial. Tax evasion. I think maybe there was even other crimes. George Soros has invested directly, I believe, in some of the real estate ventures that Kushner is part of. He's got a very tightly woven business web, so does Trump, and this is probably where it all fits into Israel and a lot of investments in that part of the world, in addition to a very strategic relationship with King Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu. So this is kind of where you start pulling up, peeling down the onion, and you just keep, crying the more and more you learn. And I see Lynn, I think, just said, she gave me thumbs up on the Bannon still there on the strategy. So, as is the title of this video, has Donald Trump been compromised? I think it's a very important, relevant discussion to have at this point. I think the reality is there's a heavy weight on Trump. There's a lot that he's learned that he probably didn't know before that is weighing on him. I think the sheer fact that he can't get things done like he used to be able to do in the corporate world of which he kind of could dominate, and people were just ordered to do whatever he wanted. He's now faced with a massive smorgasbord bureaucratic nightmare mess that I'm sure is very, I'm not going to say disconcerting, but just frustrating at the end of the day, where I think probably in the back of his mind there might be some validity to the fact that he's regretting even being there in the first place, which is eerie to think about just from the standpoint, we've asked this many times before, Americans joke, when you're talking on the street with your friends, why would you even want to be president? I mean, that's been the biggest argument for, I think, decades now. Who in their right mind, even wants to be president. Honestly, like honest to God, like there's so many good people out there, good, intelligent, moral people that could run, but at the end of the day, they decide not to do it because the whole system's so morally corrupt and bankrupt and dishonest and bureaucratic and just falling apart from the seams that most of the good people out there are just like, you know what, after even giving it careful thought, screw it, it's not even worth it. Better off just doing my own thing, and we'll let these other people do it. And it's just a testament to Rome burning, in my opinion, too. It's a testament to Rome burning to the ground, the modern Rome here, the United States of America. It's just, we've made the same mistakes that many of these civilizations, of which all of them fall, have made in years past, generations, hundreds of years, thousands of years past, all these different civilizations where they create such a bureaucratic nightmare, spin themselves into infinity, engage in military imperialism all over the world, that they bankrupt themselves and destroy themselves from within. And all the politicians do, who many of them have no real world experience at all, they're just career politicians, just continue to feed, bleed the system out dry, like almost like they've slit the wrists of the country and we're bleeding in a bathtub. The banksters rape and pillage, and it's beyond. All of a sudden, you ask, how did Rome fall? How did this empire fall? How could something that great collapse overnight? Well, that kind of answers our question, right? And it's where we are today, which is why it's such a serious time. Now, let's talk about some major themes as well, as I've been discussing and have been on my mind. Major themes going forward into the future are, what is everyone talking about? Where's all the investment? Jeff Bezos, who I make fun of all the time, the balding guy is blasting off into space. This just came out last night, He's selling, I think, about 1 million shares a year of Amazon stock, roughly $1 billion annually, to fund his hobby, which is Blue Origin, to blast off into outer space. Elon Musk, who's also heavily embedded, interwoven, and contracted, literally, with the federal government and the deep state itself, is also just fully engaged in this hobby to blast off into outer space. They're investing in all these, new amazing, radical, take the chip, mark of the beast technologies, where they want to chip your brain with Elon Musk's new company that he just started, a multi-billion-dollar future industry called Neuralink. There's this radical explosion, they tell us, in algorithms and artificial intelligence and self-driving cars and the merger of man and machine, transhumanism, the Ray Kurzweil agenda, all of these things. And everybody's looking at the up, and up. Just this, again, the singularity, we're going to reach it, and within a decade, artificial intelligence can exceed the intelligence and consciousness of all of humanity combined. And we're going to move on into this robotic world where man is part machine and our species have been altered into a new matrix type environment where everybody lives forever, only the elites, by the way. Well, most of us will die because we won't have access to the same technology, just like we don't have the same access to the healthcare now. And it's just this, super optimistic utopia in these people's minds, which I view the opposite, I think, is a dystopic reality. It is a self-created hell in a self-induced separation from God and nature and everything that is beautiful and soulful and human. Everybody's looking at the up, and up. Oh, it's just going into the stratosphere. Just like if I was to equate it to pre-tech crash in 1999, 2001 period. It was all, there was, again, everything's on the up, and up. And so everybody, this is a main theme. Everybody's looking out into the future. They're looking at the parabolic exponential line of where we're headed. Oh, we're going to colonize Mars. We're going to space. They're going to change the atmospheric conditions. Bezos says that By next year, they're going to start running human beings up in his aircraft, his new Blue Origin aircraft, which they just released these images in about a year. Everybody's focused on what's ahead. And they think that that's the natural progression. Right? So if we're looking at like a linear line, they're just seeing this, but they're seeing it really go parabolic. But nobody is even thinking or questioning. Then instead of going parabolic, we do this. You see what I did there? I don't know if it came on camera or not, but basically, we take 2 giant, maybe 3, maybe more giant leaps backwards. And people aren't accounting for this. You know, even with what they tell us with the jobs being lost and these kinds of things, where 38% to 50% of all jobs will be eradicated in the next 10 years. Yeah, that's a possibility. That's one of the potential outcomes. I think it's an overriding theme. But what happens if, like Rome, we do this? And we take 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe steps back? What does that world look like? What does a world look like where real tangible skills are what is needed to survive? I mean, in today's tech world, if you think about it, as human beings, we don't even need to be physical. Like if you're in shape now in today's world, it's totally artificial because it's not even needed in today's society, in today's world of implants and technology and the internet. Like really, we should just all be like fat, giant Borgs sitting in our chairs, moving it around in an electronic wheelchair like Stephen Hawking or something. There's no use even for the physical body in this new economy, whatever it is. I mean, unless you're a professional athlete or you go to the gym artificially or work out artificially, it's really just for your own well-being, which by the way, I highly encourage and we all need to do. But there's really no benefit in this new hyperbolic, technologically innovative, new economy, new world that these people are building, which is one of the reasons why the focus is on these new multi-billion-dollar enterprises like space exploration, asteroid mining. I'm not trying to go too far off a tangent here, but I think it's a phenomenal discussion, an example of kind of where things are headed. But everyone thinks that this party can continue forever. Let me give you another example. Do you know, I was talking with, again, some of my allies last night. We are living through the second longest artificial bull run in history. The second largest artificial bull run is completely artificial because it's all 0% interest rate, fueled, infused, criminal monetary fiscal policy central to the criminal private bank, Federal Reserve System here in the United States. It's fueled it. This is the second largest run we've ever seen. And people don't think that's going to come to an end? You've got to be kidding me. And the longer this thing goes, the more aggressive it becomes, and the longer we go without even a simple correction means we're not going to get a correction. Even, what was his name? Josh Hartnett, I think it is. I used to follow him when I was in the stock world, and I was working at Merrill Lynch as a money manager. You're privy to certain access that you're not as just a member of the public. And so there's a lot of confidential internal reports and reviews on the marketplace and kind of think, what's going on in the trading world and this kind of stuff when you're a employee of one of these giant Wall Street financial institutions. And I'm trying to think, what's his name? Is it Josh or is it Michael Hartnett? I think it's Josh Hartnett. It's Hartnett. I know it's the last name. And somebody forwarded me, as I still have contacts in the business, kind of his little analysis blueprint of what's ahead. And basically what he was warning, this is coming from the institution, Bankrupt of America, which merged with Merrill Lynch, the company I used to work for. Basically, his latest report was, we're going to have a giant crash. Like a giant black swan disruptions on the table. Because the longer we go with this artificial fueled market rally into infinity without even a simple healthy correction, it only means that we're going to have a gigantic swing at some point You're going to wake up and the market's going to drop thousands of points, not hundreds of points, but thousands of points. And Wall Street's going to shut down, of which will happen with multi-thousand point drops in the drop of the hat. Things will just shut down completely. They'll lock up Wall Street and the algorithmic trading. It'll be the equivalent of a digital EMP. So these are the things that people aren't accounting for. There's some other statistics, for example, like crowd psychology and just crowd theory and these kinds of things. The dumb money, so to speak, is more heavily invested in the market, in the artificial reality, than they ever have been before since pre-2008, 2009. So the dumb money's in. The smart money, a lot of the money that I know, my contacts in the business, these guys are either out of the market in cash, own gold, and some of my more aggressive contacts are short the market, which means they're actually betting on the massive disruption, or at the very least a simple correction of 15, 20+% or more, pushing us into bear market territory as we hobble along, I think, the 50-day moving average right now, which a lot of traders are looking at. This isn't something I follow daily anymore, but from my contacts perspectives, this is what they're telling me. So I would like to know, what do you guys think? Do you think, back to Donald Trump, do you think Donald Trump has been compromised? Or do you think he's bluffing? Let me see if there's any other reports that I could comment on before we close. And again, today's going to be a little different, so I'm probably just going to go an hour today instead of the 2-hour live, based on everything we're doing and setting up here in studio. And then I'll probably shoot more content throughout the day to keep you posted on things. But I'm going to do a little bit different today. Okay, here's an interesting report. This appears to be breaking right now. Trump considering options for Syria retaliation, sources say. Why don't you guys even watch this along? But this is going to be awkward because I can't see a moving image. So I don't know how I can show this to you. Let's see here. Trump considering options for Syria retaliation, source says. Maybe I'll just read it to you. This is the Criminal News Network. Pushing, and this is the deep state pushing for this. President Donald Trump has told some members of Congress that he is considering military action in Syria in retaliation for this week's chemical attack, which I know Trump knows is a lie. So this is why I think it might be a bluff, and recognizes the seriousness of the situation. The source said the president had not firmly decided to go ahead with it, but said he was discussing possible actions with Defense Secretary James Mattis. Trump is relying on the judgment of Mattis. U.S. officials tell the CNN the Pentagon has long-standing option to strike Syria's chemical weapons capability. I'm reading. Give me a second here. Again, they're saying here Trump, said the chemical attack was horrific. He's now flexible. Okay, so here's like the proof in the pudding. This is a quote from Trump. It's a direct quote. These heinous actions by the Assad regime cannot be tolerated. The United States stands with our allies across the globe to condemn this horrific attack and all the other horrific attacks for that matter. So what Trump just said there is he accused and has accused Assad. That is a major development and a major bombshell and a major changing of course that we haven't seen before with the Trumpster here. Why is he saying this? Either there's legitimacy. Here's what doesn't make sense. Again, what does Trump say all the time? He doesn't trust the mainstream media. He thinks they're full of crap. Even when I've covered some of his events, he's actually pointed at AMTV thinking I was with like CNN and called us the fake news. I'm like, dude, Trump, man, like, if I could get past your security people, like, we're on your side, bro. He hates the press. So the fact that he actually is suggesting that he believes the press's lie the fake news, the mainstream media, the Clinton news networks lie that Assad is the one that implemented the chemical weapons attack yesterday over the past few days isn't even logical. Because again, we have evidence as far back as 2013 of these chemical attacks being the responsibility of the rebels on the ground, not Assad. So why is he saying that? Now, I've got to close before 60 minutes, so I've got a timer on here, so it'll help me do that. I've got like 7 minutes left or something like that. Here's the other side of the coin that we should address, which I don't necessarily agree with or think is the case, but I think is an act of critical thinking, and many of you are probably thinking along these lines, and I think it's valid. I'm not saying you couldn't be right. I'm just saying I don't agree with it. Some of you will say Trump's been compromised from day one, that he was never who he said he was. He's always been working for them, and he's no different than Hillary Clinton. It's a valid criticism. It is a valid act in critical thinking. And it is possible. I don't believe that based on my due diligence, my research, my knowing of who this guy is, my contacts, my sources, my instincts, my gut. I don't believe that. But that is a possibility, that Trump has been a sleeper cell all along. And the entire military-industrial complex and the entire political establishment, Republicans and Democrats, and all of this has been manufactured from day one to take out Hillary Clinton and even stage that. To stage the whole idea that Trump was different when he wasn't, and that Trump beat and somehow there was an act of good so he could ride that political vacuum. 5 minutes to go, 4 minutes or less. That political vacuum that would harness all this anger and this rage and this populism and the social media movement and movements like alternative media television, all these kinds of things. I get that argument. I do. It's a valid critique and it's a valid criticism. I don't believe it to be true. But I did want to address that because, again, most of the media out there, even within the quote-unquote alternative media, will only speak to their narrative, will only speak to their agenda. And when it compromises it, the mouth goes closed. And that's not what we're about at AMTV at all. It's another reason why I pointed out, and I was pointing a finger at a lot of these other quote-unquote organizations. None of them were reporting on Syria until yesterday when the story got so big and it blew up, after which alternative media have been talking about this for weeks. Why no one's talking about Syria and then the chemical attack unfolded, and it got so big that they could no longer ignore it. And the reason why they were ignoring it was twofold, if I can remember correctly, in my own mind. Number one is it didn't fit the narrative of the Trump agenda because all these people back Trump and they don't want to criticize him even in the least. Right? So they don't want to hurt that message because they're all in bed with each other. And secondly, although it's a little bit escaping me, there was a second reason. Now, first reason was it didn't fit the narrative. It hurt Trump. Oh, well, the second reason is many of these people aren't who they say they are, which I talked about yesterday, and about the fact, and some of which I have name dropped and outed as what I believe to be intelligence assets, according to my sources, alleging that they are the real truth and the real news when they're not. They're all counterintelligence, according to my homework, my knowledge of the matter. So that's the twofold reasoning. How can you help us? How can you help me? How can you help my crew? How can you help yourself? I want you to like this video right now. How many likes do we have? What, like less than 200? That's a joke. That's a joke. Honestly, we should all be ashamed of ourselves. Please hit that like button right now and share it, because we don't have any kind of organic virality anymore. Again, it's a total shutdown. It's total Nazi Germany. It's total fascism. So unless you literally, this is how you can help us right now. You have to literally make an effort to help us. You've got to click the like, and you've got to share by clicking the arrow. Click the share button. I've got to close out here pretty quick. You need to tweet it on your Twitter platforms. You need to embed it on Facebook. You can put it on your website. You've got my full permission. And I've got a live clock here, so I'll cut it before the 60 minutes. Share it everywhere. And get these likes up, because that's a freaking joke. Honestly, you should be ashamed of, everyone should be ashamed of themselves, including myself. Get it up. Get it up! I've got my bat. And I'm getting angry. Let's get this up. Come on, it's an absolute joke. We can do better. We need to work harder. Okay, we can't just, I can't do this alone. Nobody can. Now, I'm about to break some shit, America. Get this likes up. Get it up and share it and get it out. Because we can't count on these criminal institutions, Google, any longer. They've been compromised. And so have the long laundry list of these criminal corporate institutions that are the deep state that are pulling out, of which I got a laundry list on demand. Also, subscribe, $4.95 a month, $49.95 a year. Support us what we're doing so I can hire more people. Before, I'm trying to rein in here, before I start really beating some stuff around here. So get it up, like it, help me out. What we're doing here is not easy. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to you. I've got about 60 seconds or less. And I see we got the likes going up. Keep it going, guys. Keep it going. I don't want my blood pressure too high today. But we can't do it without you. I really, really do need your help. So share it, like it, link to it, embed it on your blogs, your websites, etc. Get it out. I've got to cut the stream. Hard hitting in your face. I'm Christopher Green. Those are my thoughts on Donald Trump and the potentiality of him being compromised. Thank you.
Good evening, guys. Julian Assange is so right when he says unless the left disengages from the establishment elites, the alternative right will destroy it. We will. I mean, every single time that they refuse to handle Ivanka's brand, we boycott them. Every time they say they're not going to hire vets, they're going to hire the immigrants, we boycott them. They lose every time. Every time they do something stupid, like with the transgender bathrooms, we boycott them. They lose every time. It says WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange tweeted out a series of warnings to the liberal establishment on Monday. The day started with a tweet explaining how the American left has now embraced the institutions it once despised. That is so true. They hated these people. They literally hated them. And now they're groveling at the feet of big business, of people like George. They used to hate George Soros. And now they got their nose so far up his fanny, you can't distinguish between their face and his ass. That's how pathetic it is. I mean, it's like, yeah. As I said, he said, U.S. progressives are celebrating neocons, FBI and CIA in their existential battle to dethrone Trump. There was a time when the far left despised the FBI. They despised the CIA. They hated big business. And now they love them. It says the deep state now works for the good guys. U.S. progressives are clinging onto false heroes like the FBI and the CIA in their existential battle to dethrone Trump. And then he says, Assange then links to an outstanding video by Paul Joseph Watson on conservatism, the new counterculture. And I'll put this in the description box as always, and you can read it and watch his videos. It's just amazing, really, when you think about how everything has turned. It is now the conservatives who don't like the FBI and the CIA. It is now the conservatives who can't stand so many of the super wealthy. Unless they stand for us, we don't like them. How bizarre, How bizarre. As they say, everything changes, guys. If this has changed in a way nobody ever foresaw 10 years ago, I'll guarantee you, nobody, I don't give a damn who they are, nobody foresaw the far left praising the CIA, the FBI, and all those people. Nobody thought they would be praising someone like George Soros. Guess what?